It's echoing, right? Yeah. I think it echoes. Okay. Hello everyone. We're starting now. Welcome. Is it better now? Okay. I'll keep the mic at a distance. So welcome to the co-creating climate policies youth driving inclusive NDCs session. The session is jointly organized by YOUNGO, YOUNGO's NDCs Working Group, International Indigenous Youth Forum for Climate Change, and UNDP, and the Youth4Climate Platform. Now, one question might come to all of you, that why are we doing this session? The reason we're doing this session is that YOUNGO, in partnership with IIYFCC, with support from UNDP and Youth4Climate, organized a global consultation series that we call the Regional Consultations on Meaningful Youth Engagement in NDC 3.0, where we engaged over 700 young people from 92 countries to know what's meaningful youth engagement in the NDCs. After concluding the consultations and after having some findings, we thought it would be fantastic to share the findings with you, and at the same time get your insights on what meaningful youth engagement is, and at the same time what youth inclusion in NDCs look like. So that's why we're organizing this. We have an excellent run of show for you, prepared for you for the next hour. First, I'll not talk too much because I think we lost a couple of minutes. I'll directly go to opening remarks from Verania Chow, who's the Global Inclusivity Advisor for UNDP. Verania, I pass the floor directly to you.
Thank you, Korak. And I hope you can hear me. So basically, as Korak mentioned, we are very excited to be here and also to share the results of the report, and also to share some of the information that we have been supporting. So basically, I just wanted to start by I hope you can hear me there. Just by start saying that, basically I want to emphasize the critical role that youth are playing in climate action. And we are seeing these at the national and the subnational levels where we work. We are seeing that 50% of the climate promise countries that we supported to develop and update their NDCs. Okay. So maybe there is something going. Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, so I think it's on and off, right? Okay. No worries. I have a strong voice, so you may be hearing me soon. Anyway, so just wanted to say that so we are seeing interesting progress in some of the NDCs 3.0 that we have been supporting. And let me share here a few stats. So we are seeing that 70% of the NDCs are including references or considerations to youth engagement and empowerment. And we're also seeing a more emphasis in terms of capacity building and training, as well as in terms of establishing coordination mechanisms and or platforms to support youth engagement. But of course, we are not seeing this across the board. So we are seeing 50% of these countries that we have supported, roughly over 100 countries, really addressing these critical aspects and starting to building these blocks. But we want to push countries to ensure that, for example, coordination mechanisms or platforms are there for youth to engage on an ongoing basis. We wanted to make sure that as we move into the NDC's implementation, we want to ensure that countries can work with youth and can co-create the next steps with youth. And then I just wanted to mention that there's some countries that are really pushing this agenda forward, and we're going to hear today from Liberia, but I also wanted to refer to other countries briefly, just to indicate that there is some progress, but as I mentioned, we still need to continue working around these aspects of empowerment and engagement in a meaningful way. And my colleagues will speak to that in terms of the recommendations that youth themselves have identified. So I'll now give the floor to our colleagues for them to share about the results of this consultation that Porak referred to. Thank you.
Thank you, Biranya. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meg. I'm the co-contact point of the NDCs working group of YOUNGO. Also this year, I'm serving as Mongolia's youth negotiator. So I would like to start by introducing you to the main findings of the consultations that we have conducted between the months of April and May of 2025 this year. They were led by YOUNGO, which is the UNFCCC official Children and Youth Constituency, in partnership with UNDP and the Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change. So I guess we're experiencing a little bit of technical issues, but I hope you guys can hear us. Okay, amazing. So we have conducted regional consultations across all 8 regions involving 714 young people from 92 different countries, all representing different regions across the world. And this consultation was conducted on the Youth4Climate Platform, which is organized by the UNDP Rome Center that is based in Rome. Okay. So the main purpose of our consultations was to listen to the perspectives of young people, how they're being engaged in their NDC processes, and most importantly, to understand what barriers are they facing when they are trying to be engaged in their NDC processes. So we have conducted the consultations in 2 ways. The first one being an open consultation platform through online surveys. And the second way was we opened open discussion rooms where any young person could join online and then get engaged with a moderator that was dedicated to their region. So first of all, I would like to start. Okay, so the average age of our respondents was 28 years old, and all of them, the biggest group of respondents came from Africa, and the second one came from Asia Pacific, and then the Arab states. Thank you. Next. Okay, so here is probably the most important part of our consultations, and I would like to begin with the barriers that we were able to identify by the answers that these young people have given us on what were the most recurring issues that they were mentioning about. So firstly, the most recurring points across all regions that were equally present, that was present across all regions, were structural barriers. So many young people told us that they rarely know where to and how to engage in their NDC processes to begin with. Consultations often happened late, at the very late stage. Even when young people would have the chance to participate, their contributions were not meaningfully reflected in the final documents of the NDCs. Engagement was oftentimes a one-time event or just several times of events without having a consistent and continuous process. This is why respondents called that clearer structures that bring youth in the beginning, from the beginning, such as through youth advisory groups, official institutionalized spaces in NDC committees within their ministries, tied to their ministries, was incredibly important for meaningful youth engagement. And these kinds of mechanisms are, we identify to be the most, one of the most important steps for governments to include young people meaningfully. Another major gap that we have identified was lack of capacity, limited capacity. But one thing I would like to mention is that this goes on both sides, not only towards the youth that are being engaged within the NDC processes, but also towards the governments. because governments, they also need the capacity to know how to engage young people meaningfully from the beginning until the implementation and monitoring processes. So what young people have consulted with us was that NDCs are very technical. It is very difficult to understand for an average person, and therefore for young people, it is quite difficult to be engaged in these processes. So we identified that capacity building is one of the most important steps that the government has to take, not only towards those trying to engage, but also towards the institutions that they're trying that are engaging young people. Okay, so the next another barrier that we have identified, which is one of the most important when it comes to meaningful youth engagement, is financial and logistical barriers. So this reoccurred in every regional consultation. Most young people, when they're being engaged in their NDC processes, whether it is the consultations or the capacity programs, it is the finance and the lack of funding and also the logistical barriers. So, for instance, if the consultation is happening within the capital city, then it would require those young people who are living in the rural areas to travel on their own funding. And moreover, it is also about the time that they have to contribute that is unpaid. The time that they could have been contributing, earning money to support their livelihood, they would have to contribute to be engaged in the NDC processes. So, yeah, I'm quick. I know I'm over time a little bit. So, yep. So, okay. So the next one is the lack of feedback. The lack of feedback that young people don't receive when they are actually being involved in the NDC processes. So it is oftentimes that youth are consulted, but we don't hear back how our inputs are being reflected within these documents. So this was another recurring issue. And the last one being that, of course, one of the largest barriers is that we don't see equal representation from young people that are being involved. That it is often that times that those who are closer to the capital cities, who are closer to this process, are being engaged within the processes. So, which means it would systematically exclude rural communities, those who are the most vulnerable towards the climate change, as well as indigenous peoples. So on this point, I would like to hand it over to my colleague from the International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change, Pema, to speak more about the consultations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick, for sharing the results, the barriers, and the recommendations that young people provided during our regional consultations and all the process that we have been organizing in terms of getting voices of young people on NDC processes. So, Tashtile everyone, I'm Pema, and now I'm gonna move you guys towards some of the patterns that we found in various different regions when we are consulting with young people. So in many times, even when I was engaged in NDC preparation process in my country itself, a lot of times young people's expertise are questioned really well. Like, do you guys know the technical aspects of NDC, and are you able to provide the technicalities that is required in the NDC processes? So if you can see in the different priorities that youth have presented in their in different regions, you can see that youth have really reflected on what the region actually needs to address on the various climate actions and the various challenges that humans are facing in their own regions. So if you can see within the Africa region, their key concerns, young people were concerned about water, food, energy security, green and climate education, as well as indigenous inclusion. And like the barriers Meg already addressed, some of the key barriers that our young people from Africa faced when they were consulting and engaging with NDC processes. Sorry for all the noise, but I hope you guys can hear me. Where lack of finance, logistic barriers, obstacles, and a lot of information and lack of their participation in actual decision-making spaces. And similarly in Asia and Pacific as well, a lot of young people felt the priority areas are renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and disaster resilience. These regional priorities really reflects the situation people, humans, in regards to climate change are facing in these regions, and how young people are so concerned about these things, and also have the capacities to ensure that these kind of priorities are there in the NDCs. However, a lot of challenges that we see in various different regions are indeed in terms of their participation, as well as how their participation are finally meaningfully reflected in the final NDCs and not. In some of the amazing recommendations that you have presented in various regions are the establishment of youth advisory group within the ministries, so that young people have a dedicated space where they can prove their voices, where they can have their voices heard, and as well as spaces that not just listens to their voices but acts upon their recommendations and actions as well. So these are some of the very important recommendations that we have received from various different regions. And you can see some of the recommendations that they also recommended on co-creating spaces where NDCs are monitored with the participation of young people as well. And some of these ideas, they can only come from young people. They do not come from the representatives or the negotiators or the decision makers of our countries. So when we were having these consultations and having conversation with young people during all the regional, all the virtual as well as in-person events, it was really amazing to see the kind of energy that youth brings on the table, which is innovative, which is important, and which really ensures that we, at least young people, are ensuring that a lot of marginalized voices are on the table when we are deciding the futures of people and our planet. Moving on, I'd like to take you guys all a bit back to a few months and a year ago. So we started all the consultation process through SBs. So we launched during SB 62 through the COP30 presidency event, and then we also had an online youth engagement forum 2025 where we brought a lot of young people from various different countries and regions together in this virtual space, where we had a very big consultation sharing, and a space where we also brought in negotiators from various different countries, where we had a one-on-one conversation with these negotiators on understanding what are the state positions on NDCs and how they see young people's engagement, and also holding them accountable through young people on how young people have realized that they have not been meaningfully included in the NDC preparation process. So with these, we also made our presence during the Africa Climate Week through Africa NDC Clinic Dialogues for Ambition and Implementation. Okay. All of these spaces are really important because some of these spaces have also ensured that we are not just meeting virtually, but we are also participating in person and sharing our realities, our recommendations, and as well as our experiences together in SBs and also in Africa Climate Week. And moving on, today we are here at the COP30 with various different events again organized. We are already here at one of our flagship event in this, which is the side event we are having today, coming in a full circle from our virtual recommendations to coming here together, sharing a lot of the recommendation, a lot of experiences, and a lot of voices that we have gathered from all the 7 sociocultural regions. And finally, I would like to request everyone to stay very tuned for the final report, which the people who are working behind the scenes, as well as each and every individual, all 700 young people who have really put their voices and ensure that this space at least listens to young people's voices and takes these voices forward to not just among young people, but also to state representatives. And we, as International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change, as well as YOUNGO and UNDP, and a lot of people who are engaged in processes, are really determined to take these recommendations forward and hold our own governments accountable to listen to young people's voices and to ensure that the recommendation here are really implemented and we can see this recommendation into actions. And yeah, I'd like to thank everyone who has been in this journey, who has been today here with us, and making sure that the voices that we have brought on the table through this report is really inclusive. And it's our common fight to ensure that these recommendations are really moving and really being heard by our governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Pema and Meg. Can we have a round of applause for them for doing such an amazing work with the consultation? And Can we have a round of applause for all the young people who participated in these consultations to bring up their voices to ensure inclusion in national and global processes? And I'd like to thank Virania, Pema, and Meg for joining me on the stage and sharing their insights from the consultation and from UNDP's perspective. And I'd like to request you three to join us in the audience as we move to the next part of our discussion. Thanks again to Virania, Pema, and Meg for sharing their insights. And that takes us to a very rich panel discussion. And for that panel, this is not a panel discussion. I like to call it an interactive dialogue, where you will also have an opportunity to interact with the panelists and with the speakers to ask questions and to share insights as well. So for the interactive dialogue, I'd like to request first Teddy Taylor, the National Focal Point for Action for Climate Empowerment ACE, for the from the Environmental Protection Agency of Liberia. Teddy, if you could please join me on the stage. Then I have Maria Mozaner, the Environmental and Climate Policy Specialist and a youth negotiator for the Lebanese delegation. And finally, I would also like to request Hayley Campbell, the Director of Care About Climate, to join me on the stage. Welcome, the three of you. I know it's hella loud outstairs, but I also like the fact that the weather is showing us why we are doing all these, right? So I'll not take any more time and directly go to the Q&A with you guys. And first, I'll go to Teddy. Teddy, I think I'll pass my mic when I finish the question. So Teddy, you know, a very inspiring thing to me is that Liberia's NDC 3.0 is now recognized as a leading example of inclusive climate governance. Can you tell us how your team made sure that young people were not just invited to participate, but truly empowered to shape the process from the initial stocktake to all the way to the final validation? What was your process and what did your team do to ensure all this?
Thank you so much. This process, the process of the development of Liberia's NDC 3.0 and the meaningful inclusion of young people came about as a cause of an experience. So I was a member of the Liberian delegation in 2015. That was my first COP in Paris. And I was a youth delegate. And fast forward from 2015, it's about what legacy can you leave behind? I'm 10 years in the UNFCCC process. I'm leaving, right? Or I might be leaving. In the next 10 years, in the next 5 years, what is it that I can look behind and say, this is what I was able to do to have meaningful youth participation, and not about only Teddy Taylor. So we started to engage authorities, and not only being the focal point of ACE, but was able to make sure that we set up a constituency that is very vibrant, right? And we keep in touch with them, so that during the update process of the NDC 3.0, it was quite easy because we already had in the room the colleagues from UNDP, and so we were able to talk to UNDP and say, how can we be able to make sure that youth is highlighted in the NDC process? And so we're able, on top of that, we're able to get some funding from the Climate Promise Initiative to organize exclusive youth dialogues. Right? Those exclusive youth dialogues are very important. We brought young people in a separate conversation and brought the expert to explain to them, why NDC, why the step between the INDC, the NDC 2.0, and the different gaps, because we did a stock take. So the gap within the stock take informed us that we needed to push more. And so the stock take was very important. It gave us the opportunity to make sure that, yes, those are things that we did not do in the previous NDC. We now have the opportunity to correct that. And so that was a process which we were able to correct. And I can tell you, Liberia had committed just quite recently at COP30, Liberia was able to sign the Declaration for Children and Youth in Climate Action. That is a quantitative leap in terms of having young people and children involved in the processes of climate action, right? And we were able to sign a declaration. On top of that, during the NDC revision process, we were able to endorse the youth clause, right? As a country, we were able to endorse the global youth clause. That is a step forward to making sure that young people and children are not only appreciated, but they are included as active agents of change and active participants, right, in the conversation that borders around climate change and environment. Today we are here. The applause goes to the kids in the various counties, right? It's not an applause for the national focal point of AIDS. It's them who feel the burden of climate change in the villages, right? And they were able to make their voices heard. I'm happy because the Liberia NDC is up to 2035. So in the next 10 years, when I'm leaving the stage, I can be sure that, yes, in 10 years period, we were able to make sure that we prepare the scores of young people to be able to take on the helm of leadership in terms of environmental governance and issue of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teddy. It's so inspiring. Well, when I was hearing, you started from the Paris Agreement where all this started, and now you have shaped your country's policy in a youth-centric, child-sensitive way. That's such an inspiring story and such an inspiring journey. And it's also really inspiring to know that Liberia has adopted the Universal Youth Clause, which takes me to Haley, the founder of the organization that came up with the Universal Youth Clause. Haley, could you tell us more about the Universal Youth Clause? I mean, how it started, what it calls for, and how it's helping to make youth inclusion a standard and not an exception, but a standard in national climate policy processes.
Thank you so much. Am I talking loud enough? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So thank you so much for having me. I actually want to start out my story a little bit similar to Teddy's. I met Teddy back when I went to my first ever talk, but I didn't really know that I met him. I didn't know what was going on, to be so real. I joined with my university in the Action for Climate Empowerment negotiations, ACE for short, and I started because another young person was sitting next to me, and they saw me sitting there all alone and was like, hey, we need you. We need someone to help hand out papers to these ACE people. And I'm like, cool, I had nothing to do. I guess I don't know what I'm handing you, but here you go. And then I ended up getting involved with YOUNGO and with ACE, and I ended up meeting Teddy, who was one of the champions to help ensure the inclusion of young people, children and young people, as key stakeholders in climate policies in the ACE Action Plan and Work Program that came out of COP26 in Glasgow and then COP27 later in Egypt. And what's really important is because that laid the foundation for us to create our project called the NDC Equity Tracker at Care About Climate, which trains young people as data analysts, as learners, as leaders, as advocates who can and should be informing what's happening in their country's NDCs. And so what this tracker does is we train young people from their country to be ambassadors of their country's climate policies, and they give recommendations to their government for youth inclusion, gender justice, and climate ambition. And as a result, we're able to connect them with governments to really advance these recommendations. And that informed what we now call the NDC Youth Clause last year, of which Teddy was one of the very first champions because he knows how hard that we worked to get the policy in the UNFCCC outcomes, go from that policy, then say, okay, step further, let's analyze how it's going, it's not going well, and then let's say, how can we make it better? And that's what I think young people are so powerful for doing, because we don't just sit and look at the problem. We see the problem, we understand the problem, and then we say, okay, what can we do to change it? What can we do to have that solution? And the NDC Youth Clause is that solution for NDCs, giving us another anchor as young people to say, here's a commitment from my government that says we're going to recognize you're vulnerable, we're going to say that we need to collaborate with you, and we're going to make sure that we have climate education such that
children and generations coming on and hopefully perpetuity after us, because we've done so much to tackle climate change, know what we've done, know how to contribute in the long term, and know how to create and exist in a world that's changing, that does recognize and engage with the rights of Indigenous peoples as other forms of knowledge that are also important, that recognizes that climate change and climate solutions can come from many different parts of our society and our communities, but one that requires being sustained in the long term. And so today we've had, as a result, the UNFCCC NDC synthesis report actually includes children and young people for the very first time. And that's not by accident. That's the work of YOUNGO. That's the work of people sitting up here, sitting down here. It's the work of the NDC Partnership that supported youth engagement for so long. It's Youth4Climate, all these groups that have supported young people to get to where we are today. And the NDC Youth Clause is giving us another policy anchor to do that. So now, if you're here and your government hasn't adopted it, you let me know, because we're trying to get as many governments on board with Teddy's help as well to be a part of the NDC Youth Clause Coalition. So now we have young people that can say, hey, you agreed to include me. Here's how, and here are my ideas as someone from this community about how that can be done best. Because the people that are at home experiencing these impacts are the ones that have the solutions, and therefore we should be engaging them throughout the entire process, from development to implementation, but also to monitoring and evaluation. And the NDC Youth Clause calls for all of that, so calling on all of you to help us get there. Teddy, thank you, Teddy, so much for your support and championship. We really would not be here without you, and yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Am I audible now? Okay, I can hear myself now. No, I mean, here, Haley, as I was saying, this really shows that young people are not only finding problems, but we are also providing realistic solutions to the world, to our governments. We are providing solutions that are quantifiable, that are achievable, and that are implementable on ground. So kudos on your work with the Universal NDC Youth Clause. And yeah, again, if your governments haven't adopted the Universal NDC Youth Clause, reach out to Haley. She will make them adopt. Now, also, I also again want to echo what Haley said, that young people are not only finding problems, they are also giving solutions. That takes me to Maria. Maria is a negotiator from Lebanon who follows loss and damage. And another interesting thing, Maria was also a participant of the regional consultations, right, Maria? I mean, the youth engagement in NDC processes. So Maria shows how young people's journey can, shape policy processes, and how young people can come and contribute in global policy processes. Maria, what I want to know from you, that you have trained young people during Lebanon's NDC boot camp, and now you are a negotiator at COP. Congratulations on that. So, and this is a real example of how young people change their narratives and change their dynamics. So, how did the ideas and priorities shared by youth influence the development of Lebanon's NDC 3.0? How did young people influence Lebanon's NDC 3.0?
Can you hear me? Well, okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. Thank you, Amanullah, for the questions, and thank you both for the very interesting intervention and the amazing initiative, honestly. So as you were saying, I actually started off as a youth negotiator thanks to a program in 2023 in COP28. So that was my first COP. And today I lead the negotiation on loss and damage for my country. So I think just my presence here today, oh, thank you. Thank you. No, but really, my presence here today is really just an example that we can do it. I mean, Jana as well is a new negotiator here for Lebanon, and she's leading on adaptation. The entire Lebanese delegation is made of youth negotiators. So yeah, just wanted to start off by saying that we can get there when we are empowered to do so. And I couldn't have done that if I wasn't, if I didn't go through a program called CYNP, Climate Youth Negotiator Program, if I wasn't supported by my government to do so. So Lebanon actually very strongly follows the ACE agenda of COP. And this is how we see many programs that are developing in Lebanon. Like we see recently there was the ALCOI, the Lebanon Climate Conference of Youth. And there was also, the youth of Lebanon also drafted the Youth Climate Manifesto, where the young people sat together on a multi-day workshop, and they actually developed a whole document that was presented to the ministry, showing their factual demands. And the third thing, which is what I participated in, which is what we call the NDC bootcamp, which was also a multi-day training where we really took the NDCs and the UNFCCC process and really demystified it, because it's a very intimidating language. It's a very intimidating process used through NDC, Paris Agreement, UNFCCC, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage. And as a young person, it's really confusing to hear all of this. So the goal of this workshop was really to sit down some youth under the Youth Leadership Program, UNDP program, and really have a multi-day workshop where we start with giving them the information that they need. But the outcome, this is our input, but the output was really to have them draft concrete recommendations, concrete NDCs that were later on presented to the minister and integrated into the NDCs 3.0 of Lebanon. So we had multiple sessions. Mitigation, we started explaining them what the hell the CO2 equivalent means, what the hell does BAU means. On adaptation, we really demystified again all the concepts of adaptation, loss and damage, etc. So it was structured in multiple sessions. The first half was giving the knowledge, and the second half was taking the knowledge that they have to share. And by the end of it, we had multiple groups divided sectorally. And about 2 months later, we requested a formal meeting with the minister where they presented their recommendations. And the beautiful thing to see was that the recommendations of the youth were actually almost 100% in line with what the ministry wanted to set, which really shows that, you know, like, it's not because they're young that they're not going to know. You just need to give them the right information, the right toolkit for them to develop this, and they will get there. So, yeah, and I think that's it for me. I think it's just putting the youth in a setting where they feel entrusted with something. They feel the responsibility. Like, you're not just sitting them to train them. You're sitting them and telling them what comes out of this session is going to the ministers, and what comes out of your session with the minister is going into our NDCs. And when you put the sense of responsibility, well, you're not just here to learn, you're here to give back. I think this is how they really feel a sense of involvement. And yeah,
I cannot agree more with you, Maria. I feel like oftentimes what governments do is that they make the communication very one way. And this is a perfect example of how two-way communication reaches success, and two-way communication, reaches to places that matter. So again, thanks, Maria, for sharing your story. And it's so inspiring how the Lebanese delegation is mostly consisting of young people. We need these type of delegations more at COP to drive actual change in this space. But yeah, thanks again. Who's that speaking? Oh, sorry, I think my got another channel. But before I move on to the audience, I have a quick fire round for all three of you, which is, I want to know one sentence or one recommendation from each of you towards government on preparing towards governments who are preparing their implementation plan on how they make youth engagement meaningful. One sentence, one recommendation from each of you. We'll start with Teddy.
Because I work for government,
Yeah.
and I've been through the refinery of YOUNGO. I see YOUNGO as a refinery. So I would say nothing about youth without youth.
Thank you, Teddy. Maria, over to you.
Sorry, this is going to be very simplistic, but just consultative sessions, involvement, really, just yeah.
Thank you. Haley, one sentence.
They're stealing mine. I'm just kidding. Adding on to build, follow up, and continue with long-term engagement.
Thank you. Those are some fantastic recommendations, and I don't want you guys to leave right now. I want to open the floor to our audience because I'm quite sure there will be a ton of questions. If not, I have a ton more questions for you guys. So yeah, first you, then me. Who has questions for this amazing panel of speakers? Come on guys, I praise them a lot. Ask questions. Questions. Yes, thank you. You're my savior.
Okay, do you hear me right? Okay, perfect. So I'm Nan Pongwitun. I'm the the organizer of Alcohol in Thailand for this year. And actually, like Thailand just published the NDC 3.0 before the COP30. And I just found out that there was just one word that mentioned youth in that NDC. So, and like for this year, we have just only one youth negotiator to be here as well. So maybe I just would like to ask you, and maybe if you can like recommend me as a local organizer, like how to engage youth more in the NDC and how to like really engage and ask the demand to the government to have more youth negotiator from our alcohol. That's it.
I'll take a couple more questions before I get back to you. Any more questions?
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Agustina and Adolfo from Paraguay. We've been working from the civil society and inside of the government with our NDCs. And our question is, what are the mechanisms that your country have in order to raise the voices for young people? Because in Paraguay, for example, our youth secretary is not part of our climate commission, which is the organ that makes the decision. So we as civil society don't have like a representative there. Yeah.
Thank you. I think those are quite broad questions, so I'll get back to the panel, take answer, and open up again. First question was from our friend from Thailand. How do local organizers work in a way that they can engage more young people in the country's NDC process? Who wants to take that? Yeah, Haley, please.
So I'm also an Elkoi organizer, so I felt fitting to answer your question. I've organized Elkoi USA for the last 5 years. Oh my gosh, we've done 5, yay! And it's been really difficult because the United States has been historically, especially now, really terrible at really engaging not just young people, but anyone. And they have, this time around, we emailed and emailed and emailed to convince them to host a consultation with young people, and they will let Mother Nature take a moment.
That's young people being thunders.
Yes, she supports us. Okay, go team. And for us, I think it's that it was really difficult to get just this one consultation. I emailed, I called, I know the head of delegation randomly because I did an internship and he was there. And you really just have to keep trying. That was the first thing. You have to keep emailing them. Be the bug. You can never annoy them. Keep sending their email. They probably just didn't read it, you know? So I think, one, be your own best advocate. Secondly, we hosted a consultation, and to be honest, they put it in their NDC and said, we consulted you. If you read, first of all, we made our own consultation, right? And we know that's true. Fine. Second of all, they didn't include a single thing of what we said. Not one thing. Youth not mentioned a single other time. So I think even though we didn't get the outcome that we wanted, we were starting to build a relationship with them. And so my advice to you here would be go and find the Thailand negotiators that are here, sit down with them, share your expertise on what you want to see in the text, start to build the relationship. And eventually it might be slow. It might not be as amazing as Liberia and Lebanon are doing, but it can happen. You just have to be really resilient. And secondly is they've already agreed to the outcomes in the ACE action plan, which literally says they should include young people. So bring them the text that they've already agreed to and say, here, I'd love to understand how you're implementing this. Can I please learn about what you're doing? And have them tell you about what they're doing. And then you can say, oh, I didn't know you were doing that one. Or if you see them scrambling and they don't have an answer, you can say, oh, that's no problem. We have a lot of ideas. We'd love to continue to work with you on this. So have them explain to you first, listen, and then use that as your leverage. Because odds are they probably know they're not doing enough. And if they put it on just one delegate, it's certainly not going to be enough. So use those two things. And I'm happy to talk more after as well.
Thank you, Haley. Who wants to take the second question? Teddy, please go ahead.
Yes, I think it's important. It's important to harness sectoral coordination. When you have a proper sectoral coordination, then things go into place, right? So you have the youth person at another ministry, and you have the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change in another place. It's under sectoral coordination. I'm the national focal point for AIDS. My office sits within the Department of Multilateral Environmental Agreements. I should have a good relationship with the Ministry of Education. I should have a good relationship with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right? So I'm able to take my telephone, right? Because of the connection I have built with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I will take my telephone and call the minister and say there's a serious issue. I want you to intervene on the diplomatic note. I will take my telephone and call the Minister of Education. But you need to make sure that you harness sectoral coordination. Without sectoral coordination, there's nothing that will be in place, right? So you always need to make sure that there is one government, there is one ambition in the government, and so the organs of the government should be able to work together, right? And that's the only way you can be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Teddy. We are almost. Oh, yeah. Maria, please.
Yeah, I just want to add a tiny little opinion piece here. Government officials tend to make us feel that they're inaccessible, but I think we all should remind ourselves that they work for us. And, like, you make a very valid point, like, bug them until they answer you. We got lucky that our government needed to put in place a delegation, and it was easy to get youth. Also, there's also something to keep in mind. I'm not saying this is what Lebanon does, but a lot of government can abuse the willingness of youth to participate and do voluntary work. So it's also something to keep in mind in whatever we do. But to follow up on sectoral coordination, I think it's really important you mentioned that. I mean, you have this youth body somewhere, you have the climate body somewhere else. Like, no, you need to do something about this. Youth should be included. And also, for Thailand, maybe like the idea could be to look at programs that fund young negotiators, and try to bring that up in your government, but always come with something. Like, never come empty-handed that, oh my God, I really want to be involved. What can I do? No, come with a game plan, come with a case study that shows success in another country. Like, oh, I've seen that this delegation had no youth, but then they went through this program and now they have youth. We would like to implement a similar something in our own country. So I think, that's just what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you again to Haley and Teddy for sharing such insightful views and such inspiring stories. When I go back to my accommodation somewhere in Belém today, I'll be a more hopeful person. Not only because of the amazing consultation process that we saw, but also from your inspiring stories. So thanks again, and I really hope that you stay with us for the next 10 minutes of the session in the audience. I'll quickly call Pema and Meg back on the panel, and before that, thanks again and thank you. Let's have a round of applause for these inspiring people. Pema and Meg, if you could please join me back on the stage, and Verania, maybe you as well. I have one burning question I want to ask the three of you, so I need you guys here. Okay, so I'm quite sure you all are also very inspired with Teddy, Maria, and Haley. But let's address an elephant in the room. We have the interest, we have the dedication, we even have the right people. But what about money? Where is the money coming from? how do we better finance and how do we better fund youth engagement in our country's climate governance process? How do we bring in more money for young people? And it's a very deep question, but we have our closing remarks in 3 minutes. So 1 minute for each of you. Maybe Verania, you can start.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Porak. Basically, just want to say that, what we have seen in terms of what countries are prioritizing, we're seeing two tracks. One is the inclusion of youth considerations within their climate finance strategies and investment plans, which is very important because at the end, these are the planning tools that countries will use to inform their actions and to inform where the funds that they will mobilize will go to. So that's really important. And then the other track is about access to finance. And this is where we want to make sure that there is a clear intention from our government counterparts to support youth-led solutions and actions on the ground. And we want also to ensure that the youth that we work with and that are present on the ground also connect to the national kind of level processes. So then they can really not only access this funding, but also connect to a longer kind of a process that will eventually also ensure that the resources are flowing not for just one little kind of project here and there, but really in a way that youth can become part of this green transition that we speak about. So I'll stop there and I'll allow my
Thank
colleagues
you,
to
Verania.
discuss.
Pema, how do we bring in more money for young people?
Maybe because I'm not a money giver, so I don't have specific points on how we can do that. Verenia put really nice comments. But I think my own experience during NDC, because for me, I led the NDC preparation process for indigenous peoples in my country. And to tell you a fact, indigenous people were not considered in any of the workshops led by the country themselves. So I led the consultations for NDC and representation of indigenous people during NDC. And what I did was I hold my movement accountable. I hold my elders from indigenous movement and elders from the mainstream climate movement accountable in calling them out that where are young people in your consultation that you are organizing? Where are the young people and indigenous people in the consultation that government are organizing? So a lot of times young people do not have to bring in money. Our elders, our mainstream movements, our climate organization, our mainstream climate organization have to ensure that they are creating spaces for the young people who does not have those finances to make sure that we have a space where we can bring young people who can raise their voices without thinking about these finances. Because for me, a lot of times, I think our creativity should move towards solutions rather than finding money. And that problem, I think, should be with the government and with the mainstream organizations as well. Because when there is needed, we are always working on bringing more fundings for our solutions. But when it is for the spaces like decision-making processes, our government should be the one giving resources to young people to make sure that our voices, we have safe space where young people can join, like our friends from Lebanon shared about the various workshop consultations and programs they have organized, and this funding should really have to be provided by the governments, and we need our elders to support the young movements.
Thank you, Pema. Meg, quickly, how do we bring in money?
Just 2 minutes. One second.
Not 1 second, 1 minute.
Okay. I mean, like Pema, I don't have the clear answer to that because I also don't work for the government. I don't know what is up with the microphone, but I hope you're hearing okay. But I would like to share some insights. So what I did this year was that from the civil society's perspective, we actually conducted consultations on how what young youth demands are for the government for the NDC 3.0. Currently, our government has submitted its main targets, preliminary targets for the new NDCs. However, they're yet to generate the implementation plan that would actually break down how they're going to do it. And then in this implementation plan, they will actually break down the national budget planning on how they're going to achieve it. So through our recommendations that we have generated, we actually have mentioned that to integrate a youth innovation fund into the NDCs, Whether it's going to be accepted by the government or not, it's a different question. It's another question. However, I also wanted to agree with Ms. Virania that it is very actually important for it to be included within the NDC because it is determining the national budget planning. And it's something decided by the government where the money goes to. So I think that I agree with both of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg and Verania Pema. Meg, thank you for your insights, and please join us back in the audience again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute honor for me to welcome Laila Hasanova to the stage. Laila is the COP29 Presidency's Youth Climate Champion and a true champion of youth engagement in NDC processes. Laila, thank you for joining us. Please take a seat. And Laila, we know you ran this campaign last year before COP29 on youth engagement in the NDC processes. Maybe share some insights from them and share your recommendations on how meaningful youth engagement is a key and not only an ornament. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm really glad to join. So, first of all, the nationally determined contributions topic was very important for myself as well because I come from Azerbaijan and from the Central Asia and Eastern Europe region, where young people are unfortunately not equipped properly with the proper instruments and knowledge in order to tackle the climate crisis. So when Azerbaijan was announced as a host of COP29 in 2023, we were all just waiting for the knowledge, information to bring it to our community. Because I think that the work starts in the smallest community that you represent. For example, at schools, at kindergarten, at universities. And so one of the first things that we did was launching the NDC 3.0 campaign, and I was trying to bring clarity during high-level events, engagements to the policymakers, decision makers, that children and youth is a very important segment of the national determined contribution of any country, of any party. So when we were developing this in Azerbaijan, we also worked closely with UNICEF in order to raise awareness and consult with young people and children on the nationally determined contributions in Azerbaijan specifically. So main idea and my main suggestion would be, in order to once again to bring a nationally determined contribution which is inclusive, is to first of all build the capacity of those children and youth, and not only children and youth, all the experts that work on NDCs, be it policymakers, leaders, on how we can properly integrate children and young people, because those NDCs will serve us, the next generation. And that's why I think that it's very important that we include everyone, and we make the inclusive process by equipping those young people and children with the proper knowledge and tools.
Thank you, Leila. And like I mentioned, Leila has been championing youth engagement in the NDCs, and we just got to learn about your process. We were honored from YOUNGO to be a part of that process. And with that, I'd like to end today's session. We're already out of time. And before closing, I'd like to call all our panelists and presenters back on the stage for a final round of photo, and to close the event on a good note, on a hope, with a hope that young people will be the key drivers of NDCs, and young people will be meaningfully engaged in the country's NDC process. Thank you, everyone. Please get on the stage. Let's take a photo. Thank you.